through Christ who strengthens me. This has been a constant reminder for me for the past year of my life. Everything's been a little bit crazy and different. But a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, after I gotten back from Kenya, which I'm about to talk to you guys about, Father Chris was very gracious and asked would I like to say anything, and I was like, nope. I'm not a public speaker. It's just not my gift. I have a lot of gifts, but I kept getting this overwhelming feeling while Jason was talking about Honduras. I heard this distinct, I need you to do this. And so here I am. This is my third one. So excited. I'm almost through. But facing our fears is something that seems like when I was thinking of what to say has come to me of trusting that God will be with me. He will strengthen me, and he will make it okay. I did have, for the children's sermon, I had a map, and every time my map person forgets about the map. But I had a map telling where we did. We went on a mission trip to Kenya, and Father Chris again, oh, Charles, thank you so much. I was telling the kids that when we went, we flew from Huntsville to Atlanta to Amsterdam, and then Amsterdam to Kenya, which is right in here. And then from there, we spent the night, slept a couple hours, and then an 8-hour ride to Migori, Kenya. Thanks, Charles, you're the best. Just for those that don't know me, I guess I should back up just a little bit. My name is Jann Eich. I am the youth director here. My family, we moved to Madison about 15 years ago. We came, our very first visit, we decided we were going to check out all the churches, and our very first visit was to a church, was St. Matthew's, and it was the pig roast day. And so Father Steve talked to us and said, you should stay. So we did. And at that point, Stephen, sorry, I'm going to call you out again. Stephen was 2. And so I was feeding Stephen, getting him ready to feed him lunch. And I looked up and Mark was flipping hamburgers. And then I realized we had found our church home. Mark is an emergency medicine physician in Huntsville. He works in the Madison ER, the Huntsville main, and also pediatric ER. And he works with Dr. Amy Billings. Dr. Amy Billings, her husband, Julian Billings, is a gastroenterologist, and he has gone to Kenya this was his 5th trip with Kenya Relief. And so they approached Mark and said, would you be able to go? And so when the opportunity came in June, we said we would. They were taking their son, who Stephen goes to school with, and so there were 4 teens that traveled with us that were non-medical, and everybody else was medical. I had some hesitation when we started praying about it that, I haven't practiced as a nurse in a very long time. So I was a little worried, what could I bring to the table? Would I be able to dust off my nursing skills? And I was really hesitant at first, and then I felt that verse, you can do this with God's help. And with Mark and everyone, we prayed, made the decision to go. So I'm going to skip around a little bit because I did on the second service, I forgot to tell about the orange story. So Tom told me I had to make sure to tell y'all the orange story. Kenya Relief is a group that was started by a gentleman by the name of Steve James. His daughter, when she was 16, saw an advertisement about not Kenya Relief, but a story about Kenya, and decided to sponsor a child. And his name was Newton. When Brittany passed away when she was 19 while she was away at college, and of course Steve and Greta were very distraught. They were from Coleman, Alabama, and so Steve, being a registered nurse, did all the research and wanted to find Newton and to give back to Newton. Since Brittany had dreamed about going on a mission trip, she wanted to meet him, and for 3 years had supported Newton. Long story short, that's where Kenya Relief was born. It's a compound in Migori, Kenya, that has an orphanage. They have about 100 orphans, and then they have boarders from all over the area because they have a school, and the school is a top-notch school. They have their marks are off the charts. So they have people in the community that pay for their child to come to Kenya Academy. They have a farm right across the street. Farming, my dad was a farmer. Farming is very close to my heart. And so it was amazing to see. The Boltinghouse family are from Arkansas. And so they have moved to Kenya, and they do the farm. They have kale and tomatoes, and they had just an amazing working farm. And what that does is it provides food for the kids, but it also gives them an opportunity to teach the kids about farming. Okay, so the orange story. Devery Coughlin is one of the moms. They're from Huntsville. Curtis and Devery heard the call about 4 years ago and moved to Kenya, and they are in charge of the Kenya Relief Project. So Devery knows the kids really well. She knows the town of Magori. She has done so many rescues. She will find kids that are either living on the streets or are in really bad circumstances, and she gets them to the orphanage. So these kids are just amazing, and Devery had found an orange, and so she grabbed an orange, and it was the last one. She said, I have an orange. Whoever gets to me first can have it. And there were a group of about 8 boys ranging from 10 to 12. They linked arms, and they walked up to her, and she looked at one of the little boys, I think his name was James, and said, James, you're the fastest. Why didn't you do that? And he said, Miss Devery, how could I eat an orange when my friends, couldn't enjoy the orange too? So those were the stories. I want to be like that. I was just, her influence is just amazing on these kids. Let's see. Oh, the clinic. The clinic was another, it was drooling days. I mean, we got up, got to the clinic by 6:30, and sometimes we weren't there until 7 or 8, working on patients. We had patients with a lot of medical issues that we don't see in the U.S. And then we had lots of goiters. It was just amazing how many patients that would show up before we got there. When we would drive up in our vans, there would be 50 to 100 people waiting to see the doctor. Some of them their first time, some of the kids their first time. But another fear I had to overcome is when we got to the clinic, we did a mock clinic to see how everything would flow, and we were blessed to have Gary Watson. He's one of the health directors at CCI, and so he watched how everything flowed, and then the next day he said, okay, this is what we need. And all the nurses, everybody was quiet because they needed a triage nurse. And I was sitting there. I was the only former emergency room nurse. And so we sat there for a few seconds. And then I took a deep breath, and I was like, okay, I'll do it. And what triage entails is that I saw every patient that came through the door. Ended up having 2 other nurses that came and helped me. But everybody was like a puzzle, and I would have to figure out where to send them. We had 2 gastroenterologists. We had 2 ER physicians, and then we had a nurse practitioner. So I would have to decide where they would go, and it was fun. I was telling some other friends. By the end of the thing, I don't know does anybody speak Swahili? I do not. And when I got there, I was assigned a translator, and he was amazing. Zachariah stayed right with me, but I had another one too. And this is a story the other services didn't hear. The first day I looked at Mark and I was like, okay, Carolyn hates me. She was very, she wanted everything just the way that she did. And if you know me, I'm just kind of like, okay, So by the next morning, I was just really worried about going back to triage, even though it had been a great day and had been busy. And this lady came flying out. She spoke 4 dialects of Swahili and spoke English. She was an amazing lady. And she came flying out and met me at the van, and she said, are you going to get to be with me today? Please tell me you're going to get to be with me today. And I looked at Mark, and I just started laughing. God is a powerful God, because I was just, again, I was so nervous about doing everything and making everything right. Excuse me. Let's see, I told the orange story. There's so many different stories, and you guys can talk to me after the talk. And it was an amazing adventure, and it was Stephen, again, I try not to tell the story when he's not here, but one of the highlights for Mark and me is that the teens that came with us would work in the medical clinic till about 3 o'clock, and then the kids, when the orphans got through with school, they got to go and play with them. But one day, we got off of clinic, and I walked, and there was Stephen sitting in a little grass hut with one of the little boys. And the little boy was stressed about a test he had to take. That was their finals. And if he didn't do well, he would not move to the next grade. And so I looked at Stephen, Stephen is not, he loves school. Yeah. Homework and stuff is not his thing. But he was out there sitting in this gazebo with this little boy constantly going over math problems and English problems, and they spent probably an hour and a half working on this. The same little boy is one of the little boys that we are sponsoring. Ambrose was 10 years old when Devery found him. She goes through the town, she knows the people, and she found this little boy. He was 10, and his parents had died. He had been kind of given to different, and he was people, and he was living with some distant cousins, and he was taking care of the cattle. And the cattle there, they don't have just a fenced area. They have one person that goes around with the cattle all day long and then goes home. And so he had never been to school and just never really had a home unit. So she was able to get him to come to Kenya Relief. And he was 10, when he was first got there in 10, he was in first grade. And she said it was so funny to have all these little kids, and then there was Ambrose. But Ambrose, his heart, he was determined. He's now 13, and he's sixth grade, so he was getting ready to take the seventh grade exam so he could move on to seventh grade. And so there's so many stories that I wish I could tell you, and I wish I was better at just pulling it all together and showing you what an amazing trip that we had. If you're sitting there and you have ever thought about a mission trip, talk to Jason, talk to me. It's life-changing. It was, and don't be afraid. That was my big thing. It was like, okay, what about this or what about that? But it all fell together, and with my friends and my teens, it all worked out. But again, I can do all things with God, and thank you for your attention. You can see me afterwards.